Leviticus 18:22 and 20:13. 18:22 and 20:13. And as you guys are turning, I'm just going to read it for you guys. Leviticus 18:22 says, "You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination." And then you could kind of put your finger there and flip over to maybe the next page, Leviticus 20 verse 13, where it says, "If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination." That word committed is the same word that we saw in Ezekiel, did an abomination. It's the Hebrew verb assa. And we see here abomination, singular form. "They shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them." Now, I know that sounds really rough, really hard. And actually, revisionists admit this is one of the hardest passages to get around. I mean, it's so clear. Man lying with a male, don't do it. Now, one of the newer ones, and I didn't put this up on my slide because this is fairly new and it's kind of, a lot of these, really smart TikTok theologians are, pushing it out there. And it has to go, it's something like this. You might have heard it before. This passage, a man lying with a male, is not a man lying with a male, it's a man lying with a boy. Anyone heard that before? Well, here's the problem. Without even getting into, the actual Hebrew. So first of all, if this was actually a man lying in Leviticus 20 verse 13, if a man lies with a boy, if that's what that is, why is God putting both to death? So that view actually attacks the very character of God. That he is no longer a protector of the weak, but a killer of the innocent. You see how crazy that view is? Why would God put an innocent person to death? Furthermore, the word for male is the Hebrew word zakar. And we find that one of the first places that we find it actually is Genesis 1 verse 27. Let me read it as if zakar meant boy, which it doesn't. "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Boy and female, he created them." Clearly, that's not what that means. Zakar never means exclusively boy. Now, it could, because male just means male any age. Male, he could be boy all the way to adult. But these passages, I'm going to group them together because these are parallel passages essentially where Leviticus 20:13 essentially gives the penalty. Leviticus 18:22 just says it's wrong, don't do it. And then 20:13 gives the penalty. How do revisionists, what are some different ways besides saying that it's male and a boy? And also, another thing that, remember I talked about historical context, using the wrong historical context. Here's another example of using the wrong historical context. Because they're like, oh, it's pedophilia, that's what's going on. That's often the common go-to that revisionists say, back then in ancient times, it was pedophilia. What they don't actually realize is that's not really true. Whereas in first century Rome, and I actually don't even want to say pedophilia was common, it was more what we call pederasty. The Greek word pederastes. That's different than what we know today as pedophilia. Pederastes was when maybe an adult in his maybe late 20s or early 30s might have an intimate relationship with someone who's like an adolescent or preteen or even a teenager, like 12, 13, 14 years old. That's pederasty. Now, I know that sounds like, in our times, that's just, oh my goodness, how could anyone do that? But what's the common age for a woman or a young lady to get married in the first century? Anyone know? You guys know? Was it like 20? No, like 14, 13. And again, I know for us, we're like, that's crazy. But think about it. What's the life expectancy back then? Like 30. Maybe 40. So if you're not gonna live that long, you better crank out those babies quickly. Seriously, as soon as a young lady is able to have babies, if I'm not gonna live long, I got to have children. So it's just being practical. So if it was very common for an adult man to then maybe be with a 14-year-old in their mind. So that was the Roman world. But, so they had pederasty. In ancient Israel, we don't have record where that was a common thing, pederasty. So what individuals, the revisionists are doing is they're using the wrong historical context. They're trying to prove that pedophilia was a thing in ancient Israel when we don't have any evidence of that it was a common thing.